I always say you should take like half steps out of your niche to like find different things where it's like when I first kind of blew up, I was mostly talking about literature, mostly like horror literature. Then I started kind of taking those steps into let's talk about an internet horror story that's not necessarily literature. And you get a bigger audience that comes in for there. It's like, oh, I talked about a YouTube channel that was kind of horror focused. Like you get more people coming in. So it's like taking these little half steps out of your niche and bringing more people in. And then you build your captive audience so you can force them to watch your weird content, force people to have your own interests now.
Most companies still think of YouTube as a playground for influencers or gamers, but they're overlooking one of the most powerful, consistent platforms for creators of all kinds, including B2B. As the world's second largest search engine, YouTube isn't just a place for passive scrolling. It's where people are actively searching for answers, often spending several hours with just a single creator. Today, I'm joined by Davis Morgan, a full-time YouTuber who's built an audience of over 80,000 subscribers. Davis started his career in digital marketing, launched his YouTube channel, and was able to monetize it within the first year. Now he's creating content full-time and proving that YouTube can work for any niche, not just entertainment. Let's get into it. Davis, thank you so much for joining me today. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. And I think there's a common perception for a lot of companies who think that YouTube is great for influencers, maybe gamers or beauty tutorials, but they might be missing out on one of like the most consistent platforms for creators. So what are your thoughts on that? What do you think when someone comes to you and is like, I don't know if this is the right platform for me?
YouTube it's kind of the weirdest platform because I think of all the major players in the social media space, like I think mostly of Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Those all seem like they've been cracked pretty well by a lot of digital marketers, especially Instagram and Facebook. Like I used to run paid Facebook ads. That's all been dialed in pretty well. It seems like people typically have a good handle what makes a good video there. But YouTube, despite how massive of a platform it is, feels like it's not utilized properly by a lot of businesses, or a lot of businesses don't really know what to do with it because it is a lot more creator focused, I would say, in the sense that people are tuning in to watch specific creators and see what they have to say. And it's less so a platform like Instagram or Facebook or TikTok where you're being served mostly short snippets of people's lives or a business's advertisement or something, all fed through an algorithm. YouTube, it feels less corporatized, even though it isn't because it's owned by Google. But in Instagram and these other platforms, you'll see a lot of advertisements or paid posts that make it into your feed that don't necessarily look like advertisements. Versus YouTube, you're really just being served what the algorithm thinks you will like, and then you're seeing obviously like actual advertisements on the videos that are done by bigger companies. I think it's kind of an untapped source of kind of exposure for a lot of businesses in general, a lot of digital marketers, because it takes so much time and effort to kind of build up a consistent following. It's very high effort, but it's also very high reward because you'll build a much more engaged audience there than I think you will on any other platform. Like this is a weird comparison. My mom has like 30,000 Instagram followers, which is awesome, but she kind of will talk about our little my YouTube channel versus her Instagram, and she's like, your subscribers just seem so much more tuned in. And that's kind of how YouTube is, where it's like my mom can make a reel that'll get 3 million views, then she'll post her next reel only gets 600 views, versus me, it feels like any video that I post will get around 50,000 views because I have people who are consistently tuning in. I'm a big YouTube believer. I love that platform.
Yeah.
That's where I live now.
Yeah. It might have some bias there, but
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
fine. That's totally fine. I think part of it is you have what I refer to a lot as like an owned audience.
Yeah.
Like you have those people who have subscribed to your channel, and a lot of companies accomplish this too by getting like newsletter subscribers or other ways. And that's just a lot more reliable way than relying on an algorithm to feed content to people.
100%.
So
Yeah.
when was like your aha moment when you're like, YouTube could really work for maybe any niche, and it's like not necessarily just an entertainment platform. I know you do like a lot of entertaining content, but I know there's lots of companies that can use it for education or other things.
For sure. Yeah. No, so I've been watching YouTube religiously for like 15 years now. I remember my brother like showing me some YouTube channel way back in the day. It's just understanding the breadth of like YouTube as a platform is there's so much going on it that you as a viewer are probably seeing like a fraction of a percent of what YouTube even has to offer. Like I'm sure, like if you looked at mine and my wife's YouTube accounts and our feeds, they will be completely different. I think that to me was just kind of this moment of like, there really is a spot for everybody in that. In YouTube, there's always a spot for some play to be, and you can have things be kind of more corporatized or bigger. Like Mr. Beast is obviously the biggest example. Like he is a corporation now, essentially, that makes these extravagant videos. But there's also room for smaller creators to be making content that resonates people. And I think that's a platform that could be very beneficial for a lot of small business owners, especially like really small companies, because I think podcasting has been a huge kind of boon and something that a lot of small business owners use because it allows them to maybe get their voice out there a little bit. It gives people ways to connect with them on a more personal level. And I think creating content on YouTube is also another great way to do that, especially because you can curate it more and maybe edit it more and give yourself like a view of yourself that still feels personal and authentic, but is also you talking about the things that you want to talk about, what you want people to know about you, instead of it just being like maybe all off the cuff on a podcast, which can be a little nerve-wracking and hard to figure out at first. And so that's why I like doing my stuff more edited and like writing scripts out beforehand. I think it's a good way to get whatever I'm trying to get across better and let me think about it more before I'm posting it.
That's why I think YouTube's so cool, is there's not just one formula that says this is what's going to work. Like it has to be this highly produced, nicely edited video. There's so many different ways you can do it. Like you can be super budget friendly. I know you were telling me about your setup, and maybe you can describe that. Like, what do you use for your setup?
I'm a cheap son of a gun. Yeah. So that's my other big thing is I don't think anybody really needs to invest in a YouTube channel more than like their time, assuming you have a half decent like camera. So for instance, I record on an iMac that I got a couple years ago, and I just record using my webcam that you're seeing this through right now. My microphone is it's the same one that Bailey has here. It's the Blue Yeti microphone, which is very cheap. It's like, I think it retails for like $90 or something. You can almost always find it on sale. And it is like a perfectly fine quality mic. Like it's not the best quality, but it's also good enough that anybody who's clicking on a video won't feel like things are like very poorly produced. And then my editing software is DaVinci Resolve, which is a fully free software. There's like a pro version, but I've never needed to use that. And then I write all my scripts on Google Docs, the classic. And when I'm recording my videos, you pull up my Google Docs 200% underneath, like on my screen, and I just like read it out essentially. So it looks like I'm staring at the screen or staring at the camera. The only thing I pay for is my Canva subscription, which is like $10 a month. And I only use it to make thumbnails and some other graphics for my channel. I've been able to make this channel that now has like 80,000 subscribers, and it makes me a good amount of money, and I'm still not paying like any sort of business expense. It's like I'm able to keep all this going. And I think eventually I might get to a point where I'd probably hire out an editor or something, but I don't think I'd need to use any better software. I mean, my recording software is called OBS, which is something a lot of streamers use. It just stands for Open Broadcasting Software, but that's just completely free as well. I recorded a video the other week when I was out of town. I was using my laptop and I couldn't get OBS to work, so I recorded it on Photo Booth, which is like the generic like Apple, just like random thing. I just recorded like a 50-minute Photo Booth video and I edited that. So I'm like, you know what? Anything will work. It didn't seem like people noticed the difference.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that because I've worked with companies and they're like, oh, we want to build this whole nice studio. And I'm like, yeah, wait. After you do a couple episodes, like
I mean, I'm recording in my second bedroom here.
Yeah. I think it's totally fine if you want to invest in your channel, but you want to see an ROI first.
100%, and you should make sure you're enjoying it too, right? Because I think it's another thing a lot of a trap people fall into is they maybe get this idea that they're like, I'm really needing some extra money. I'll just start a YouTube channel. I'm like, that is the worst way to make quick money. I'm like, that is like, YouTube is like, you're going to put in a lot of effort. I probably was making videos for 9 or 10 months before I even got monetized. I probably made like 30 videos, and like those are a lot of work, and I was doing it back when I was working a different job, but now I'm able to do it full time. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but if you find that you're enjoying it and you really like what you're doing, then it's like that's a time you can maybe invest in some stuff, but never pay too much for it, because it's a really easy way to get kind of jaded or feel stressed about it, especially for any small business owners, I think you should view YouTube almost like you view a podcast. And since with YouTube, it's like you don't really have to stick to a consistent posting schedule. I didn't when I first started out because I didn't know how much I'd be working on my actual job and how much time I was going to have. And so it's like, I think this could be a great thing to do on the side, maybe have a document pulled open that you're like, oh, I can maybe just start writing down some script ideas that I have in these times during the day, and then eventually you put something together and you want to record it. But I think going all in, especially like monetarily at the start, is difficult and probably not the best choice. Because again, it takes a while to make money. I think I'm kind of an outlier for even getting monetized within a year. I think it takes a lot of people more than that. And so it can be very slow. I was lucky that I hit 1,000 in January. Now I've just been growing pretty consistently because I've just been making videos nonstop at a rate that's probably not super healthy for me, but I love doing it.
That's a good point. Like, you got to love what you're doing. And for companies who are maybe listening to this, it might not be the fit for you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like you need to
100%.
have someone on your team that is willing to record, someone who's willing to write the script. And that doesn't necessarily need to be all the same person. You can do that, or you can outsource some stuff too. But I do think it is very untapped for a lot of businesses, and it can be really successful to help grow. But again, don't do it because you're trying to monetize maybe right away. It should be to build trust with your customers and have just like really valuable content.
On that note, something that I like routinely from time to time is you can be a size of company that is so big. If you're like Nike or Vanity Fair or something, you can have your corporate YouTube account that's branded after your stuff, and you'll have millions of subscribers. But I think unless you're as big as Nike and Vanity Fair and some of these larger companies, your channel should take a much more personal approach. Like, not saying you should hide the fact that you are a company, but you should definitely make it feel a lot more personal, because people will be a lot more inclined to listen to that. On YouTube, at least from what I've seen from my viewers, people are very skeptical about being sold something. They don't love that. A lot of them feel like there's already too many ads on the platform already. The video essentially acts as an ad. They feel like they're watching ads on another ad. So I think, trying to do something that maybe feels a bit more personal. I think a lot of people have genuine interest in knowing maybe some of like the inner workings of maybe some of these small businesses, as more and more people are able to create small businesses now due to the fact that we can work remotely in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people will be interested in hearing, what does it look like for a small business owner to have their day? What does it look like when they're in meetings all the time? What stressors do they deal with? What are some things that are maybe less enticing about it? I think people are looking for content like that. Giving people a window into maybe what you're doing as a business is a great way to start building a following, because people will understand that authentic connection that you have with them, and also just be more inclined to seek out content like that because it feels a lot more specific.
We've got a client, they work in the manufacturing space. So they are like super niche.
Yeah.
I always feel like I'm saying that wrong, but niche or
I
whatever.
say niche because I took 4 years
or
of French in
niche.
high school. So I'm like, I've got to say it the way that I think.
Yeah. Anyway, so they're making like the super specific content, but they started creating these videos just about how tariffs are affecting manufacturing and how to calculate your fill rate.
Videos, and I don't know, I don't know anything about manufacturing. I've watched a good amount of manufacturing videos just because it interests me, and like, maybe not everybody is a weird nerd like I am, but again, it's like, it's so niche, but people will watch it. People are interested in that. I often find that some of my better videos are these insanely niche, weird things. I mean, I'm making a video right now about this book right here, The Phantom Toll Booth, which any viewers, I always say that there are like very few books I believe everybody should read, and The Phantom Toll Booth is one of them. Especially if you have kids, read this book to your kids, because it's like the most beautiful little story that's like, it's like funny and has a lot of dry humor. It's essentially like talks about the way that we all think, but presents it in these very interesting and almost literal ways. And so for me, I love reading it because it kind of retrains my brain in a lot of ways. But again, it's like, I haven't really seen somebody talking about this on the platform. So that's a great way to maybe get your foot in the door with some people, is be like, nobody's talking about this. One of the very first kind of videos of mine that ended up doing quite well was about this band that I love. I need to figure out how to point. One of the albums is this blue one right here. They're called the Deer Hunter. They're like my favorite band ever. They have these 5 albums that tell this one massive story, but it's all very like cryptic and you have to puzzle it all together. I was like, I'd always wanted an explanation video about this band, but they're like nobody's heard of them. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to make the videos myself. And some of those videos got, at the time, it was really good for me to get like more than 100 views. Some of them were getting thousands of views because that entire audience was like, oh, they're being served something that had never been done on the platform before because it's so niche. Digging into one of those niches and then maybe expanding your reach over time. I always say you should take like half steps out of your niche to like find different things. Where it's, when I first kind of blew up, I was mostly talking about literature, mostly like horror literature. Then I started kind of taking those steps into like, let's talk about an internet horror story that's not necessarily literature. And you get a bigger audience that comes in for there. I talked about a YouTube channel that was kind of horror focused, taking these little half steps out of your niche and bringing more people in. And then you build your captive audience so you can force them to watch your weird content like my video on the Phantom Toll Booth. And that's the force people to have your own interests now.
Bringing all the people in.
Yeah.
I love it. So when we chatted before, we talked a little bit about like your script writing process and also the length of a video too.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
So starting with length of video, for the niche that I'm in and the type of content that I create, I find that people want longer videos. When I say longer, I mean they want like 2-hour plus videos, which is to a lot of people insane. I've got siblings and friends who are like, how can you watch a video for 2 hours? I always say, in my mind, if a video is like shorter than 20 minutes, I almost won't watch it because I'm like, one, I know I'm going to be listening to this and I don't have to find a new video to listen to. I'd rather just listen to something that goes on for a long time. And so that's something that I think a lot of people misunderstand about YouTube, or it's a really hard transition to make in terms of like going from these short form content where you're making reels or you're making TikToks to trying to make long form video. But I do think a lot of the principles still apply, at least in my writing, especially the hook, which is really interesting because when you're making a hook on a reel or a TikTok, a short or something, or a YouTube short, you have like 2 seconds to get out what you need. And in a YouTube video that's 2 hours long, it's not like that 2 seconds expands into 20 minutes. It's like that 2 seconds becomes like realistically 30 seconds to 1 minute. And so it is interesting to realize, like, for the most part, a lot of the success of your video will hang on your ability to maybe get somebody invested in that first little bit. I'm trying to get better at writing the intros to my videos because previously I noticed I was doing a lot of like basic intro, like welcoming people to my channel and stuff and talking about getting people to subscribe. I've lately tried to streamline a lot of that process of like the beginning is much quicker. Sometimes I don't even put a call to action in the beginning, depending on how the intro flows for me. I'll just start with typically maybe the first sentence or two from the book itself. And it's kind of cool because when people click on it, they're typically maybe a little confused because they're being spoken to in a way that feels almost like proper. They're like, what is this person saying? And then I say like, that was the first sentence to whatever I'm reading. And then I think that's a good way to kind of pull people through. But yeah, when it comes to script writing, for me, I don't think like saying quantity over quality, I don't believe that's the right way to say it. But I do think a lot of people trick themselves by wanting to make their video just this absolute masterpiece or wanting to make sure their script is perfect and every comma and semicolons in the right place. And like my scripts are probably full of errors and they're full of like grammatical stuff that's probably not correct. And like, I see it when I'm recording it. I'll like look at a line and be like, that makes no sense. Like, why even write it that way? But it's like, I think just getting that stuff out is more important because nobody's reading that, right? They're just hearing what you're saying. If you spend so much time worrying about the particulars, about if everything looks like it's formatted correctly, then you're gonna waste time. Although I do think it's important to make sure, like when you're making a point that feels important in your video, it's worded very well. And there are times where I do like wordsmith some stuff and make sure it sounds exactly right, make sure it gets across the way I want to. I have other creators who reach out to me and they're like, how do you make videos so quickly? And I'm like, I just kind of write my script kind of throughout the day. Like I'll spend 8 hours one day just sitting down and writing. And I try to get them around 10 to 15,000 words. It depends on the length of the video. This one will probably be, I thought this one would be like 6,000 words. I'm probably 60 to 70% done with it. And it's already 7,000 words. So I'm like, this one's going to be longer than I thought, which is good, but it's going to take longer to edit than I thought it was going to. It's stressful. Yeah, exactly. I think perfect can be the enemy of good in a lot of ways when it comes to creating YouTube stuff, especially when you're starting out and nobody's really watching your stuff, which isn't a bad thing. If nobody's watching your stuff, that's how everybody starts out. But it's like, maybe don't spend months working on one video that's going to get 10 views and instead make 10 videos that'll all get 5 views. And then by the time one of your videos hits, you'll have a back catalog of stuff that people can go back through and maybe engage with you more on.
I want to go back a little bit to what you're talking about with length of video and maybe style of video
Yeah.
for companies who are maybe just getting started and they're not sure where to go yet. I think this is where it can be fun and you can test different things.
Hmm.
Like I know a lot of companies, they'll host webinars or they do
Yeah.
speaking events. Like those tend to be
Hmm.
longer things. You
Hmm.
can repurpose that into the video. Like if
Oh,
you already have the
100%.
script and you spoke somewhere, that's a perfect
Hmm.
thing to share. And then if you work with like an editing company or you want to do it yourself, like you can
Hmm.
pare that down into short clips too.
Yeah.
You don't
Oh,
always need
100%.
to use just one piece of content.
Any company that is already making reels that they post on either TikTok and Instagram, post them on YouTube Shorts. A lot of people, I think, neglect that, but it's the exact same formatting. I think YouTube Shorts updated its lengths too, so it can be up to like 3 minutes, which I think is in line with some of the other platforms. You'll lose absolutely nothing by posting it there, and you might gain something. And again, YouTube is like, of all the platforms that you could focus on, I don't think YouTube has to be your focus per se, because I think Instagram is really great for a lot of, especially smaller businesses that are product focused. The worst that can happen is you don't get very many views, but you might build up, maybe, might get a couple subscribers eventually. And then eventually you could maybe monetize that. And that's just money flowing back into your marketing budgets, especially because YouTube pays out so much better than most other platforms.
When someone's been posting on YouTube maybe for a little bit, what kind of metrics should they look at?
It's tricky starting out because, like, obviously the thing that you'll always focus on is your amount of views. That's all you really worry about. And you might think about watch time too, because that's one of the ways you get monetized is by having 4,000 watch hours over the course of a year. And you'll look at your subscriber count and all that stuff. But for me, I felt what was the most important feedback that I ever got was definitely like comments, like the amount of people that were engaged and commenting and saying either nice things about it or maybe they had issues with what I was saying. I think paying attention to that stuff is really important because it shows you that people are engaged with your stuff and they're willing to write a comment on your video, which is not something that a lot of people will do. So I always tried to stay pretty engaged with all my comments, looking at what they were saying. And back then I used to respond to like every single comment I got. And I can't do that anymore because I get so many, but I try to respond from time to some of them. And I do try to take into consideration some people who maybe have some critiques for me, or they say maybe the volume of the video is too low or something, or they didn't like the way that I presented something visually, or even sometimes people have corrected me on maybe some things that I've said that may not be accurate or something. And I think it's always good to kind of take all that in stride and understand that, like, even if somebody's commenting something that is constructive criticism, it's still engagement on your post and it'll still help you out. That being said, YouTube has a feature called hide this user from channel, I think is what it's called, or hide channel from user or something. You can do it to somebody. And what it essentially does is it mutes that person so nobody else can see their comments, but they don't know they've been muted and they can still comment. So it's you throw them in like this evil prison of like, I just imagine them to like begging, like, can somebody please respond to me? Like nobody can see them. It's low-key, it's horrifying. But I do that. If anybody ever leaves any sort of like mean or snarky comment, I'm like, I'm banishing you. I'm banishing you to your prison of loneliness and from now on. So I'm like, I'm a big believer in that because I'm like, it's great to get engagement, but like, yeah, I think anytime I really get a hateful comment, I'm like, I'm just going to mute that person. They can still watch my videos. They're not fully banned. And maybe sometimes if I'm feeling particularly petty, I'll like leave a snarky reply and then mute them. I'm the worst at checking my stupid YouTube Studio app on my phone first thing in the morning, which is like the worst way to start my morning because it's like, it'll show you the most 3 recent comments. And like inevitably one of them will be like some like snarky or mean comment. And I'm like, that's literally the worst way to start my day. So I'm trying to get better at that. I need to just delete the app from my phone or something.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I think just like not really engaging with this stuff and just like dismissing it and muting it is a good way to go. In our day-to-day lives, we are typically confronted with people who will actively tell us that we are annoying or cringy or all this stuff. So seeing somebody say that about you is like, as much as you don't want it to get to you and as much as I am very confident in myself and I have a great life, it's like that stuff can get to people. It's easier said than done.
Yeah. It is a hard thing to do. What is your process like to pick topics for your channel? And maybe what tips do you have for business owners to do that as well?
Starting out, especially, you just have to make videos and stuff that you're interested in. I think when it comes to choosing topics and trying to choose a topic that you think will perform well, the biggest advice I have is that you just need to be tapped into the YouTube scene in general. If you're really wanting to pursue YouTube as a platform and you maybe don't watch much YouTube, you should start watching it. You can just count it as research. Just understanding, like watching bigger channels that aren't so big, but like maybe a channel that has 100,000 subscribers where it's like they're not massive enough that they're doing stuff that you probably can't do, but they're big enough that they've achieved an audience. Watching them and seeing what makes their videos good, what you might enjoy about what they're doing, is a great way for you to understand kind of what topics resonate with people. What is interesting though is oftentimes I won't pick a book that I like really, really loved unless it was like, I felt like I had something fun to say about it. Sometimes I'll pick a book that maybe I was frustrated with in one way, shape, or form, because I think I have a more interesting angle to take from it. I read a book recently called The Only Ones Left that was written pretty well, but I just felt like at the end it had 50 insane twists, and each twist just made it get kind of more and more ridiculous, and I was just kind of laughing by the end of it. And so I made a video on that where I titled the video like, "This book has too many twists," and that one did pretty well because it was an interesting angle to take maybe on this book. And then when I'm choosing an internet story to cover, I'll kind of go back and forth between covering something that I feel is maybe lesser known and then covering something that there are a lot of people made videos about. It might be a really popular story. I've seen other channels that are covering. There's a podcast called Creepcast that's like they read creepy stories, and they're really big, and I have a lot of viewer overlap between my channel and theirs. I can see that in my analytics. So I'm choosing to cover one of these internet stories. I'll typically try to cover a story that they've covered on their channel because I know that if I do that, most likely, if somebody's watching that video that they've made about that thing, mine will show up in the recommended. I think grafting yourself onto other channels and kind of making content similar to theirs and following maybe similar topics, but giving your own spin on them is a great way to get yourself put in the recommended feed underneath some of these more popular videos. That's something that I've found consistent success in over time. It's also fun to take swings from time to time and talk about something that might be very specific to you or people might not really know about a whole ton. I find that to be very gratifying.
Man, I had so many thoughts as you're going through that. But I remember when we were chatting previously, you mentioned you kind of create your videos so that people can have them playing on a second screen.
Yeah.
I think that is really clever. And I think that also is the entry of podcasts and why I think podcasts are so popular. But the same applies to YouTube videos, especially like if you're in business. People a lot of times, like I work from home, they might have a couple monitors and they we like having stuff going. So I think that's part of what's awesome. Like you don't always need a highly produced video and that's where you can have that longer content, but not everything has to be that way.
Yeah. I think ideally people should be watching your videos because they like what you have to say. They like the content of what you're saying rather than your video being maybe flashy or having these beautiful edits in them, which are great, but they take a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort to do that. The ethos of my channel is kind of like I'll just be a second monitor channel for the most part. Typically when I say I watch YouTube, I'm just listening to it. That's just the way that I personally engage with it. Also because I'm typically doing something else. I believe that like being a second monitor channel is a totally great way to get started. It means you have to do a lot less editing. It also means that the audience that you'll capture are people that are willing to just listen to you talk for longer. I mean, very similar to like a podcast where it's like, people are invested in what you're saying and you kind of build a more loyal audience because people tell me they'll listen to me talk about anything as long as I'm talking about it, which is like, I think it's a great way to build a second monitor channel. Yeah. I know. I want to see how far I can stretch that. I want to just make a joke video about like the most boring thing I could possibly think about, like the history of paint drying or something. And then to see if people actually listen to me talk about it. I always have these grand ideas of like, I'll make some weird joke video, but then I'm like, that might hurt the channel. I can't do that. But like I have all these random ideas. I'm like, this would be funny as a goof. But unfortunately, my livelihood depends on this channel now, so I can't be doing much for a goof anymore.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about metrics too, because I think like some of the companies I work with a lot, they have pretty small like addressable markets. Like there might only be 500 people in their audience that are maybe could become customers. So I think when that happens, you really have to take away the vanity metrics too. Like it's not like it isn't such a big deal how many subscribers you have or views, but just creating a great script and connecting with people. Like if you got 30 people in your target audience to watch that, that is a huge win. Yeah. That's awesome.
Exactly. Especially like, like watch time numbers. Like I remember one of my first videos that did well for me at the time was like 1,000 views and saying that it had like 600 hours of watch time and being like, just the idea that somebody sat collectively, they listened to me talk for 600 hours is crazy. It's like, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of time, And so like, I think people get so caught up because again, I think when people think of YouTube, they think of these massive channels, but it's like a lot of it is a lot smaller. I also think kind of every audience that you're marketing towards is probably bigger than you think it is. Because even if people like myself, I'll watch videos about something that I'm probably not actually even interested in, but if somebody who's talking about it is talking about it in an interesting way, I will be totally invested. I'll really enjoy it. And so like, I think it's a good way to kind of bring people into your niche versus a platform like Instagram where things feel very siloed. The amount of content that is being posted continuously is insane. And it's also the same with YouTube. YouTube has an insane amount of people that go on, but I do think they do a really good job of like fitting people into these niches, just not worrying about those vanity metrics and just being like, 30 people listen to me talk today, which all things considered, especially if you're a really small business, is a good amount of people. Maybe did an ad that you put $10 behind, you got 30 people to click through and make it to your landing page. That would be a good metric, So it's like those smaller numbers can be deceiving because you're comparing yourself to others. The fact that people listen to your talk is really important and a cool way to connect with people.
Yeah. When we chatted too, we talked about paid ads. What are your thoughts on promoting your channel through paid?
Don't do it. It's the worst thing you can do for your channel. It'll kill your channel. I have to think that Google and YouTube knows this, but they always promote it. It's like this temptation that's always in the back. I remember like laying awake at night and like my channel wasn't where it's at, and I'd be like, I could do it. I could just pay the $10 and I would get 1,000 views. It was like calling to me, like the siren was calling to me. But don't do it because YouTube typically rewards engaged viewers. They like viewers that will sit and watch your stuff as long as possible. YouTube's entire MO is they want people to stay on their platform as long as possible. That's why they like long videos, because long videos serve more ads and people are less likely to click off a video that's really long because they're already invested in it. That's why they reward watch time instead of rewarding like just the amount of views that you get. That's why they like channels that have more videos, because people can get stuck in this loop of watching more and more content. So like paying for views, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get, especially like the least risky way to do it would be to do it through Google's official thing. Never, ever, ever, like don't do that, but especially never pay like a third party company to get you views, because that will kill your channel. Because what you're going to get is a lot of viewers that are not engaged. And even if they subscribe, it's not like they're going to tune in for your next video, right? Like even though YouTube says it's a good way to grow an audience, it really isn't. You're not going to get engaged subscribers. And then if you have a video that has 10,000 views and each of those viewers viewed for 10 seconds, Google and YouTube knows like, okay, this video is not good. People are not watching this. People don't like it. So it's like the worst thing you can do for your channel. The only time it could be useful is if you're not concerned with actually growing an audience and you're like a business selling a product and you're like, okay, we have this product, I'd like to promote it. Then you could treat it just like you would treat any other paid advertising platform, even though Google does have and YouTube has their own like paid ads platform you can do where like you make it into the mid rolls of other people's videos. But like if you're really trying to promote a product, that could be a decent way to do it. You're probably better promoting on Facebook or Instagram or paying other influencers a fee for them to do an ad read in the middle of their video. So don't pay for views. It's going to kill your channel before it even has time to live.
The only other way I've seen people do this is it's literally a vanity metric. They're like, I need to show X number of subscribers in order to get X guest on this video or whatever. And that's kind of silly, but
I guess it might work for that. That's also where it's like metrics can be confusing. Even like a lot of people will say that to go full time on YouTube, the typical number that you need is 100,000 subscribers. People will say that that's typically when you're making like a modest salary of like $60,000 a year, maybe. But depending on the niche that you're in and depending on the amount of watch time you're getting, like for me, I went full time with my channel when I had like 5,000 subscribers. It was the amount of the viewers that I was attracting and the watch time of my videos was paying me a lot more. Depending on the niche that you're in, you'll get paid more or less for it. It's like my channel that has 80,000 subscribers. I'm on a couple forums with other YouTubers who are monetized. Like I know for a fact that my channel, 80,000 subscribers, makes a lot more money than some of these other channels that may be in like the gaming space that'll have like 500,000 to 1 million subscribers just because of the niche that I'm in and the type of content that I make. It can all kind of feel like vanity metrics at times. It's nice to get more subscribers. It's nice to get more watch time. But like, I think being so tuned into that is kind of a trap you could fall into. It's something that I fall into a lot. I try not to worry about it, but you always do.
Yeah. We do our best. What's a myth about YouTube that you wish you could just bust forever?
I think one of the biggest myths about YouTube, especially in the corporate world and with a lot of bigger creators, is people think that the platform has moved on from the time where you could sit in your room and talk about something and you could build a good following from it. A lot of people, because of the prevalence of some of these larger channels like Mr. Beast, where he's the biggest YouTuber now, and his stuff is so extravagant and so massive, and there's so much money put into it, most people that I talk to that maybe listened to him talk about something before, the thing that they know about him is that he said it took him like 5 years to even like build a good audience, and he just kept dumping all of his money back into his channel. And like, you can do that, but that's not normal, and that's not the way that it has to be. If anybody tries to tell you that like the time is over when you could, sit in your room and talk about something like you could back in 2008, like that time still exists, and it's arguably stronger now than it was ever. The other YouTube myth that I hate that is more in like the YouTube community is people who insist that like YouTube is just way better back in 2008. They're like, oh man, it was so much better back then. I was like, YouTube was not better in 2008. I was like, it was probably better because you were a kid and everything was better when you were a kid. There's so many ads and stuff now. I'm like, yeah, that does suck. But also back in 2008, you could have a video that got 1 million views and you made $0 from it. That part is really nice. I think the platform is run pretty dang well. I think the best years are ahead of us. I think most people are interesting enough to, there's the thumbs up. But we discovered you can make a thumbs up like emoji pop if you do a thumbs up symbol on here. So Riverside, awesome. You're doing cool things here. I think most people are interesting enough to have a channel that people want to tune into. I think a lot of ourselves sell ourselves short. Like I think people don't understand that if you're talking about what you're passionate about, somebody is going to connect with that. It's not like nobody's going to want to hear you talk. It's like, no, maybe they won't find the video, but somebody will want to hear that. I think most people are interesting enough to have a YouTube channel.
So much great stuff there. Man, video is a great way to humanize companies. A lot of companies fall into this just looking like some corporation that doesn't have a face behind it, but video content is a great way to solve that. I've got one last question that I ask on every episode.
All right.
It's kind of maybe similar to one of the questions I just asked you, so you can give the same answer, so it could be related to YouTube or just any content in general. But what is your content marketing? Like, what just makes you so angry when you see this?
I'm trying to think about like what specifically I dislike when it comes to. Okay, I'll list two. One is like very niche, and the other one's a lot more broad. The first, and this is one that me and my friend have talked about because my friend is a small business owner. He has this AI company he's working at right now. He's working at for a long time. But anyway, one of my biggest icks is they're less common now, but fake podcast ads. There was a really big epidemic of people who would fake podcasts and run them as paid ads. And so it'd just be like them talking to like their like other business associate. Their business associates they're like, oh, that's really interesting. I loved what you said about those jeans. Like, could you maybe expound a little bit more about that? And they essentially just do their ad read, but they want to make it sound natural. So like, yeah, man, I was just like, thank you for asking about that. Like this like weird fake podcast ad. Like, I don't know what the metrics were on that, but every time I see it, I'm like, I'm never buying anything from your company because it's like, it's the most like weird, like obviously fake thing. I totally grilled my friend. I was like, have you done one of these? Because I saw he had a clip of him on a podcast. He's like, no, I promise I've never done a fake podcast. Okay. So that's one of them. The second ick that's more YouTube focused is just in general, I really dislike this modern trend. And I know it's existed for a while, but like, especially so many videos that are marketed towards kids are edited so insanely and quickly. And the person is just screaming at the audience the whole time. One of the reasons I talk about books so much is because I used to work with middle schoolers and I fear for attention spans and just people's ability in general to maybe focus on stuff for longer. But something that is the thumbs up. To me, it's like, I get that making this kind of hyperactive, insane kind of junk food content probably makes that person a ton of money. But I do worry about the effect it'll have on people, their ability to just sit down and focus on something, which is something that I really struggled with until in college. I was just like, I really wanted to read, I can't remember what book it was. It might have been Coraline because I really love that movie. I just want to read that book again. I got my friend to give it to me and I was like, I was having to like read a page and then take a break and look at my phone because I was like, I could not stop all this, just like staring at all this random stuff all the time. And I was a great reader growing up. I loved reading, but like, I think a lot of people would have that, it's kind of on a weird tangent, but I think a lot of people would have that same view of like, I really loved reading when I was in elementary, middle school, but I fell off all of a sudden There's a lot of really great videos that cover that. It's not something that's unique to anybody. And I think if you feel that way, I think there's some shame in the idea that like people say like, I can't sit down and read a book. And like, that's totally normal. It takes a long time to rebuild that stamina, but I think people can do it. And again, I think that's like one of the most healthy things you can do for yourself is building up your attention span again and like recognizing that maybe having a limited attention span, regardless of your situation, like is a totally normal thing that we all struggle with. And the world is feeding into us constantly with all these different things we're saying. So I'm like, I think that's a really important thing. Sometimes I lament the fact that there are so many channels that are so popular and for kids that are so hyperactive. And there are channels for kids that aren't like that. Like Miss Rachel is one that my niece watched. I think she's awesome. That's a reason why I talk so much about reading and why I like making longer videos and why I like making videos that are kind of visually boring, where I'm just sitting down and maybe reading a book and not having anything else going on is really, really important to me, and something that has drastically improved my quality of life has just been like reading more and being able to like, when I'm working on something and maybe I don't need to always be listening to something, I would like play a video game, which is like the most dopamine inducing thing. And I would like be listening to a YouTube video at the same time. Like I'd be like bored playing a video game, not listening to a YouTube video. And I'm like, that is the end result of all this stuff. So I'm like, I think building that back up is really important. Unfortunately, I think a lot of content creators capitalize on the lowering attention spans of children in particular. And I think it's something that 10 or 15 years down the line, we're going to see a lot of studies that come out and say like, hey, maybe keeping our kids in front of screens 12 hours a day was not the best thing for their mental health and their attention span. So that's one of my biggest content icks.
Yeah. That got really deep and philosophical. Thank you so much for joining me. I learned a lot having this conversation and just excited for all the content that these businesses can create. But
yeah, 100%. I don't know, go do it. Make content.
Yes.
Just try it. Like, again, you're not going to lose anything by doing it. Also, if you're the social media marketer watching this video right now, if you're in charge of Facebook Reels, you better be posting those at YouTube Shorts. It's free. Yes. It's free real estate, man. Just do it.
Yes, it is. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Content Logistics. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss the next episode. Bye.